I think there's two major macro trends going on relative to this clean energy transition that are going to drive this minerals supercycle, this huge demand for a whole slate of metals, many of them deemed critical metals by a number of governments and organizations.
Run through those real quick.
Well, things like copper. We forget the amount of copper we've mined historically in the past 1,500 years. You need to double that in the next 30.
Double it.
Double it. So things like that. So you want to electrify everything. You want EVs. You want all this. Yeah, guess what? You need
more minerals.
A lot of copper, right? That goes along for the
More
ride.
dirty mining.
And in the battery metals, obviously, lots of discussion, not only about the amount of metals needed, but the detriment from those mining activities. I know there's these big pushes for ESG, but I got to tell you, the sins of mining, in my view, in Indonesia, that archipelago nation. I mean, there's entire islands that have been ravaged by nickel mining with huge amounts of runoff, and I mean, just destroying fishing, dislocating huge populations of people. And of course, there's just not enough concern about that subject. So I think as we, look at pushing more solar, more wind, the topic there is they want to get us to have a huge amount of variable renewables. Mm-hmm. They want us to have some 90% of our power grid by 2050 to be deemed renewables.
Wow.
About 60% would be variable renewables, wind and solar. Well, that's a big statistic.
It is.
And I show a relationship to the PGMs and the hydrogen economy that ties directly into this topic. When you say the word hydrogen economy, most people think of fuel cell vehicles and
Always, that's the first thing they think of.
But I contend, and that's going to be a big platinum demand topic. Don't get me wrong, true. We're confined by how much platinum we have available. We're not the fuel cell vehicles. You're not going to make more than like 9 million a year for many years, with the limits on the amount of platinum I believe we're going to have. But the bigger risk, I think, is in balancing power grids. And this is where I brought up that duck curve discussion.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
I was
about
going to
that.
bring that up.
California duck curve. That's the first time I've heard that.
No,
honestly.
most people haven't heard. And so I show a chart from 2012 when California's solar penetration rate from the California grid was about 1.5%. I show that over up to current 2022, where now the solar grid in California is 9.5% of the mix and growing. And year over year, it's growing. And this duck curve chart shows how the remaining infrastructure of the power grid, which is largely natural gas, you can't throttle it down quick enough. You could shut plants off, but it might take you 3 weeks to turn them back on. And as it ends up, the peak energy demand is in the evening from 6 to about 9 p.m. Well, solar isn't going to help you there,
No.
right?
Okay,
Right.
so let me understand this. In order to shut them down for a 12-hour period, the shutdown is fast, but the ramp up is weeks?
It would take weeks, and so they can't do that. And so what do? They do what's called curtailment. They curtail the solar. People don't love hearing this, but in California, the solar, there's percentages of it that are disabled just about every day of the year. Why? Because they got too much.
I was shocked when you brought that up.
I
yesterday.
couldn't
got
believe that
too
either.
much.
That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
It's like 2.2 terawatt hours in 2022 that California basically just curtailed.
They just took them offline because there's
but
no
we need more
consumption.
solar, and don't worry, next year we're going to put in more solar and more,
more solar and more solar.
And this duck curve and the depth of that trough is going to get bigger. And so now back to the hook for PGM demand. Why does this matter? Well, I think you got to get into this energy storage discussion, and that's I think where the real discussions of the hydrogen economy were born. Mm-hmm. They realized that they're going to need to have a large scale battery or storage capability, and that could go long duration as well, not just within day, but day to day and seasonally.
Right.
And the best vehicle to get there is going to be through hydrogen and/or ammonia, in my view. Those are by far the top two most likely technologies that can make this work with more balance. But it will take a lot of PGMs to make it work. And so even the PGM communities, including miners, including the processors, I'm pushing this message. By the
Now,
way,
are you talking about the whole basket of PGMs or just
it'd be platinum, iridium, and ruthenium.
Okay, those three are the green energy PGMs.
Yeah, the three hot topics PGMs in the hydrogen economy, right? There's a little bit of palladium, but not enough, really. It doesn't add up to much total weight. So there's a relationship here, and specifically now, you're not going to just do fuel cells. So like a fuel cell that's in a Toyota Mirai, that's called a gas to power fuel cell, right? You have a tank full of hydrogen that you filled up at a fueling station, and you convert that into energy.
To electricity.
Yeah, but you can go the other ways and think of it as an electrolyzer, where you take
reverse.
energy to generate the hydrogen.
Right.
One of the views that was thought of early is to take this excess energy during the day and just run these electrolyzers hot. And so the world's having a big discussion about these electrolyzers. How do we make all this green hydrogen that we think we need to make? Well, it's a big CapEx process, a lot of upfront cost,
Right.
like a smelter. So what do you do when you have a big CapEx cost thing? You got to run the balls out around the
Yeah.
clock.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Just to-
24/7,
just to
go.
get just the cost down. How do you do that with being fed only by renewables? Ooh, that's the challenge, right? And so they're playing credit games and
Right.
all sorts of different things in Europe and the U.S. We're just going to give a flat $3 a kilogram subsidy
Right.
to help encourage it. Is what the Biden plan is.
You think that's even gonna?
It's a cleaner plan than
something-
Europe's. It actually is. The way Biden did it is actually better than Europe. Europe's having a big battle. They're trying to define what's renewables now. And,
Right. Right.
I mean, even nuclear is a component of that. They have some heartburn in certain countries. So
Right.
no, so there's a lot to happen there. And so if we're going to balance the grid, yeah, PGMs are going to play a role.